I'm here with hockey legend Hakan Loob, who had a storied NHL hockey career. He played with the Calgary Flames, where in the 1983-1984 season, he was a member of the NHL All-Rookie team. In 1987 and the 1988 season, he was, I believe, the first Swedish player to score 50 goals in a single NHL season. And in 1989, 88-89 season, he played with the Calgary Flames that won the Stanley Cup, beating the Montreal Canadiens 4-2 in the finals. After playing in the NHL, he returned to his home where he played with Färjestad, located in the city of Karlstad, which is where I believe you are from. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's totally correct.
So it's a real honor and more than a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thank you for speaking with me, Hakan.
Oh, it's just interesting. So that's great for me too. So
maybe you can share a little bit about how you got into hockey.
Well, I grew up in a very small place, where I shouldn't say hockey, but sports overall was really, really a big part of the society. So I was doing a lot of sports. I was playing soccer, I was playing tennis, table tennis, but also hockey. And I think hockey became a very big thing in the small community because we built an outdoor rink, and my father was there and helped everybody. Everybody's helped each other to get that done. And it was in 1965, so I was 5 years old. So I got really into that, and skating became my biggest emphasis, so to speak, and it just more and more became skating and hockey. So finally, I should say, when I was about 15, 16, I was doing a lot of sports until then, but at around 15, 16, I made my mind up to play a lot of hockey. So it kind of turned away all the other sports, and from there it just went on, and I went from a lower division 2, what we call it here in Sweden, to Division 1. Had fairly good success, and then all of a sudden I got drafted by an SHL team, the Swedish Hockey League team, Färjestad, and I went up there when I was 19. And after playing a few years in Karlstad and Färjestad, I had a pretty good year, and all of a sudden I got drafted by the Calgary Flames, and then all of a sudden I had an even better year, and then Calgary signed me. So in 83, 84, I took my wife and my firstborn son and went to Calgary and pursued an NHL career.
And you mentioned the fact that you played different sports when you were a youth. Do you think that helped your development as a hockey player?
Yeah, no question about it. I of course know at the later stage of my life, I look back and I see compared to today, and the specialization that comes today already at maybe 9, 10, 11 years old, I think that's it doesn't give you the same flexibility on doing things. I thought that table tennis gave me a lot better reaction. I thought playing soccer made me more mobile and sideways and stuff like that. So I think all the other sports really helped me to become a better hockey player, no question about that. And I feel sometimes that the importance of the coaches today that coaches youth hockey players, they need to have that flexible practicing, so they can use maybe all kinds of and read and all that. But if they only practice hockey, I think that they be not as they can become good anyway, but just the flexibility and all these ingredients that you get from other sports, it's really hard when you only practice one sport, I think.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're an advocate of young people in particular playing multiple sports for developing their skills.
Yes, I think it's gone a little bit too far, and too far down in age. Like, you have to make your mind up, because now when I played hockey, we started hockey in late September, early October, and we got the chance to finish off the summer sports, whether it was tennis or soccer or whatever it was. So, but nowadays, hockey is a year-round sport. of course, you're on the ice maybe 10 months a year, and then the 2 months you kind of train for hockey only. So that's, but I prefer that we haven't gone that far with that. I thought we should have stayed, more flexible on different sports. But the society has changed, and then the pressure is on the parents, and the parents put pressure on the coaches. So it's to me, it's, you can do that, but I think we're more favorable if you could play more sports up until maybe 13, 14, 15 years old.
Yeah. And, I know I grew up in Calgary, and as a youth, I very much enjoyed watching you play with the Flames. And I remember specifically that, you were very quick and skilled, and a great stick handler. And I just wonder kind of, again, how much of your participation in various sports contributed to your agility or ability as a player.
I would say a lot. I like I said, with the experience now, being quite old, you look back, it definitely helped me a lot. I don't think that I've had the split vision. I don't think I've had the possibility to be on the right spot if I haven't played other sports. I'm pretty sure about that. And my flexibility, having doing gymnastics when I was little, I could even go down in splits when I was 50 years old. So I mean, it just made me, in doing the sports, but also not getting all that much injured.
Yeah. And in terms of injury, I know, of course, hockey is a very physically demanding and tough sport. What are some of the physical challenges that hockey players face in their training?
Well, I think you need so many different aspects. You need to be, like you were into it, you're quick, you have to be fairly fast, you have to be strong, you have to have the mobility. So it's kind of you need to practice a lot of your skills, to avoid to become a good hockey player, but also to avoid, getting hurt. Because once you're out there, there's 5 guys on the opposition that really wants to stop you as soon as you have the puck and all that. So it's a pretty physical sport, and you need to take care of yourself, not to get injured.
Yeah. What are some common injuries in hockey, or some injuries maybe that you experienced in your career?
Well, most I went through was, one, I shouldn't say badly injured knee, but the knee and my back. After my career, I imagine that my whole career, that my back got really beaten up. So I have an operation. I operate both my shoulders, dislocated the one shoulder about 30, 40 times. I had to repair that. And I had one on the other shoulder, was an AC joint that was really badly hurt. So I had an operation on that too. So that's most of what I've gone through. And that's, fortunately enough, I got hurt, so I could fix that in the summer. So it wasn't that bad, but still, that's what that's pretty much what you get into when you play hockey. That those are injuries, I think. And now, especially today, we also talk about the head injuries, and the concussions and all that. But it wasn't that common. When it was common, but we didn't have that. We weren't looking after that as much as we do today.
Right. So in terms of the concussion, you mentioned it was happening, but maybe there just wasn't the awareness that it was a brain injury that had implications, or that it could impact the athlete's health.
No, for sure. I had got one myself, at age 22, really badly, and I was out, and all of a sudden, 3 days later, I was playing again. So it wasn't like even the doctors knew, what we had to do and look after ourselves. That's totally changed. Fortunately, I should say.
Yeah. Do you recall specific symptoms that you experienced from that concussion at the time?
Yeah, I shouldn't say the funny part, but I mean, I got so badly hit, so I can't remember anything from the hit until, several hours after. So, and then headaches, of course, and the dizziness, I had a tough time to focus. So, and it went on for about 2 days. And then the third day, start feeling a little bit better. And all of a sudden you were cleared to play. So today I would probably been out for at least, 10 to 14 days.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned you also dislocated your shoulder 30 to 40 times. Was that over the course of your career as an NHL player, or was that
No,
a certain time frame?
yeah, that was just the year of 86, 87 in Calgary. So I
Goodness.
had a really, really bad shoulder. I got hit early in the season, dislocated my shoulder, didn't stay out of the game long enough. So I was kind of on it right away, and then got hurt again. And then all of a sudden I play with the special gear to keep the shoulder in place, but it just happened all the time. All of a sudden, I could even wake up in the middle of the night and the shoulder was popped out. So, but I played that whole season, and then right after, actually, I went to the World Championships, and then I went back to Calgary, had the operation, and recovered during the summer. So that was a different journey. I had that with my shoulder, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you managed to play through the whole season while your shoulder kept dislocating, and then in the off season you had the surgery.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I guess what was going through, do you recall, it was some time ago, but do you recall some thoughts or emotions that you were having as your shoulder kept dislocating?
Yeah, I remember, first when you get hurt the first time, it really hurts, and then you have a really tough time for a couple of days because of the bleeding in the shoulder. You can't raise your arm pretty much, but it went past fairly fast because I look back at my record. I didn't miss all that many games. So that was probably the bad thing about it, that I came back too early and got hit again. And then all of a sudden, once it pops out, about 6, 7, 8 times, it's almost like you can fix it yourself. You shrug your shoulder a little bit and it's back in. So, and all of a sudden of course, you're not the same player because you're a little bit more hesitant going to the battles and stuff like that. So it kind of enhances your game. But I lived with it. I worked through it, and I think that the club, thought it was okay. Play well enough to do that with a bad shoulder, because everybody knew you have an operation, you're out for at least 5, 6 months before you can really come back and play again. So.
Right. And you mentioned you probably came back too soon after it started popping out initially. Why was that the case? Or why did you come back prematurely?
I think it was myself, pushing, really wanted to play, really wanted to do well, and of course, you always feel like you want to do your best and do as much as you can for the team and for the club and the organization, of course. So, and sometimes, you need maybe somebody to tell you that maybe that's not what you should do. But at the final end, I think it's up to you if you think you're okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of a fine line. You mentioned, would you say that there are instances where the athlete's desire to play may kind of cloud their judgment about whether they should be playing?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. And that's why I think now, the medical side of the organizations are so different now. I don't think it's up to the players anymore. Even if you get a concussion during the game, or not even a concussion, you get taken off and you get tested and all that. So, and it's almost, when you look back, you were supposed to be tough, play through injuries, small injuries, so to speak, unless you were a broken leg or something like that. You were supposed to play through that, and I think also, as a European or a Swede, not cry for small things that you could work through, and that's probably why I try to do that, which was probably, if you look back, a little bit stupid, of course.
Well, and I know hockey is certainly a very tough sport. Would you say kind of that culture of kind of working or just toughing it out and playing through the pain, has that changed a little bit? You mentioned like nowadays with concussions, there's more protocols in place. Is the culture changed?
Oh, it's changed a lot. to the good, to being better, and of course this is the way it should be working, because like I think you're more useful for the team and the organization if you recover in a good sense, and especially not putting yourself at risk, for the future life. So I think that's something that everybody thinks about, and the organizations have, worked through this, and all the doctors, and they agree, and they have meetings, and they know exactly what's going on today. But at the time when I played, I think it was more like show that you're a tough player, you can work through this. So it's changed to the better.
Yeah. And so would you say that sort of the approach now is maybe a little bit more long-term? You mentioned sort of like the idea of if the athlete comes back too soon, that they're not actually helping the club because maybe they get hurt again or.
No, I think it's put into the risk, that instead of being out an extra 2 weeks, you could be out, even if for me, I could easily be so badly hurt in my shoulder that I could have ended up having an operation and be gone for 6 months, like I said, and instead of maybe being off for 2-3 more weeks, it would have been 6 months. So, but I don't know if I should say fortunate enough I could play through that season. But I can also look back and this is my really, I would say, the least good year I had. I had a pretty much I shouldn't say an awful year, but a really off year, and it
Yeah.
almost made me go back to Sweden and quit my NHL career because of that. And fortunate enough, I came back and had my operation, and really, really worked well for me. So that was the key. Otherwise, I would probably have finished my NHL career right there.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you had this operation in the off season. That was the 86-87 season. Is that right?
Yes, 87 in May, I went back to have the operation.
Right. And then this following year was the year that you scored 50 goals, right?
Yeah, that was.
What so I'm just curious, what enabled you to have an effective comeback and recovery to go from
I,
almost thinking you're going to quit
mm,
to then the
mm.
next year having probably one of your best seasons?
No, I think that I don't think I looked at the summer training as focused as this time, because now I knew I had to work out as much as I could. I ended up getting a personal trainer for the shoulder, but she also looked after the rest of me. So I think I came prepared to camp in Calgary, better prepared than ever. So I think it was just that kind of focus that, maybe an operation on my shoulder that I needed just that, at that time to even get better,
Mhm.
and I was really happy that the operation went well. And like I said, I made a huge decision coming back to Calgary and pursue my career in the NHL. So, and I just think that I prepared myself a lot better, both physically but also mentally. I really did believe all of a sudden I didn't have to play tentative as maybe I did in the 86-87 season. I came back with more confidence, more, power, well, everything pretty much so. And all of a sudden I came into that next season, 87-88 and I had unbelievable success already from the start. So.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, Hakan, that not only were you focused just on your shoulder and the recovery, but other elements of your physical and mental preparation.
For sure, yeah, and I think that sometimes, of course, if you do it by yourself, I mean, sometimes you might only look at the injury that you're trying to recover from, if you had an operation. But if you have somebody, and for me, it just became obvious that I had a lady that was really good at shoulder recoveries, but also how to be in proportion. Because if you work too much on one side or one shoulder, you're going to get, not the proportion that you want. So she was really, really good on helping me overall. And I had a little bit of a goal too, because there was the Canada Cup 87 was played in August, September, and I thought that I was going to speed and come back to that. So it was kind of a little bit of a focus to try to do and make that team. But obviously I didn't do that. It was too early. But anyway, it kind of speeded me up a little bit, mentally, to really be serious about my rehabilitation.
Right. So having that target was helpful, like, even though it sounds like it was maybe a little bit too soon to return, it also had beneficial implications in helping you really be diligent with your rehab.
Yeah, I got from the doctor. He even said that it's a possibility that you could be back, because it was a very successful surgery. So, and it just put in my mind that, again, almost like the visualization to really try to get back in August. So it kind of, I think it speeded up my recovery. And unfortunately, not making to play in the Canada Cup, it really helped me to do what I did in Calgary in that season, 87, 88.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned the fact that you had this lady that you were working with. Was she a physiotherapist, or what was her background?
Physiotherapist, yes.
Yeah.
She was really good. She was
Yeah.
really good.
So it sounds like you got support that you needed from this physiotherapist. And I'm wondering, maybe you can talk more about the value or relevance of injured athletes getting social support.
No, I think, it just shows that, I also had, a mental coach in Calgary, by the name of Hap Davis, and he really helped me, to be, this is before the injury, and really helped me visualize on things that you could be positive, and drive me through things that hard times sometimes put you in tough situations, and I think that really helped me when it came down to this injury too. So, the support of personal trainers or personal coaches it's really important, but because you can't do it by yourself,
Mm.
you
What?
need to learn things that.
Sorry, you need to learn things. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think you have to learn how you actually work as a person. I mean, it's tough to always try to find out yourself. And I think you partnership with something that, experts, whether it's coming back from an injury or the mental part of the game and all that. I think that's today it's more obvious that this is what you should do, try to get that kind of help. In my days, it was a little bit different. I think, again, everybody's tried to be strong by themselves, but I went through that summer, with really good help, with people around me, pushing you. And it's so much easier because you doubt yourself a lot when you're injured. Can I ever play again? Can I come back? But with the help I got, it really speeded up my recovery, and I really believed that I could come back and be as good as I was before I got injured the first time in my shoulder.
Yeah. So you had doubts or uncertainties about the impact of the injury on your ability to play at the same level?
Right. Oh, for sure. I mean, it's a tough situation, because I mean, playing in the toughest league in the world, in the NHL, and you need to end up at a certain level to perform, because the competition is really, really tough, within or your own team. So, and you say, can I really do that? Is time enough? Am I strong enough? Am I mentally strong enough to get back to where you have to be even make the team? And that's many doubts. And like I said, I was doubtful that I was going to go back and play in the NHL. So I think, again, you need that kind of support. Left alone, left by yourself, it's going to be so much harder. Strong persons, when they have strong personalities from the start, yeah, maybe they can do that. But I mean, it's almost unnecessary to put yourself in that almost trauma to try to do it by yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's sort of like, rather than adopting the mindset of, well, I need to be sort of stoic or tough and, just work through this on my own, it's almost unnecessary, it sounds like, to do that when you can get the benefit of support, like you mentioned, the physiotherapist that you had, or you mentioned working with Hap Davis. I'm interested on that note. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the kinds of things that you visualized when you were injured and how that visualization helped you.
Well, I think it was you just put yourself in situations where you start to believing and imagine and have your fantasy and put you in situations that you later would experience by actually doing them. And I think that makes it so much easier, because it's almost like it's a film you've seen before. You see it again, and you know this is going to happen. This is what you're going to do. Whether it's scoring goals, from certain positions on the ice. If you're here, what's happened if I do this? And if you visualize that and you learn how to visualize that, how to put it in your back of your mind, so to speak. The pluses and the minuses in your brain. And if you put a lot of more pluses, then you start to believe that every time you get there, you do a certain thing and you be successful.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, but I mean, you work on it over and over again. That really, really helped me, to become, I would say, a better hockey player.
How often would you say you visualized, either maybe just when you were injured or just in general?
Oh, yeah, in general, I think it's hard to adapt just when you get into trouble, so to speak. I think you need to do that. I shouldn't say maybe on daily basis, but a couple of times a week. I mean, it doesn't, and you only have to do it for 10, 15 minutes. And the more you learn and the more you pick it up, and then all of a sudden you get into, you sit down and you sit on a comfortable chair or a sofa, and it takes 5, 10 minutes, and you're pretty much done, and you feel more, I would say, free, or I think it makes it a lot easier once, like I said, you come into a situation where you have to know what you're going to do.
Yeah. So I like how you kind of said it's like watching a film in your mind, and it sounds like it almost helps you program yourself. So as you just mentioned, you know what you need to do in certain situations. It also sounds like that visualization had benefits for your confidence when you were injured. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, no, I don't think you could have gotten back without it, but I think it made it so much easier, and it's pretty amazing. I think it ended up the 86, 87 season scoring 44 points, coming back the next season scoring 106 points, which, and 50 goals like the first Swede. And I think I shouldn't say that the working with the Hap Davis was the only thing, or with the personal training, to get back in shape, from my injury. But to me, anyway, I do firmly and strongly believe that they really helped me.
Yeah. In terms of, you mentioned sort of questions and doubts that you experienced about being able to compete again. And aside from visualization, were there other ways that you specifically tried to manage some of those negative thoughts or uncertainties and questions?
Well, I think I mean, confidence is the whole thing, with everything, whether you're a hockey player or whatever. I think that confidence is something that of course, you build again by yourself a little bit, but then again with your teammates and all that. And I think that talking to my teammates, and think and listening to what they're saying about me, and about what things what's going to go happen in the future and all that, also helped me quite a bit.
Yeah. So getting kind of feedback from other individuals, your teammates, or like that was an important source of information that could help build your confidence in your ability.
Yeah, you somehow, when you're in a team sports anyway, then if you're not 100% part of the team, so to speak, start doubting if you can be one of the whatever 22 guys that get start the season, or get sent down to the minors, or stay up in with the big team. And I think that's, you start doubting that, you float away, so to speak, and you almost feel on the outside, outside looking in. That's where I want to be, but now I'm on the outside, and the more outside, and the more doubt you have in your mind. And I can see that becoming the manager for a team here in Sweden. You know, I saw that on injured players. It's almost like they didn't belong. They didn't belong to the team. They were on the outside, and they had to work with their own mindset so much that they couldn't really be a part of the team, so to speak. So mentally, that you can tell, I felt that, and I've seen young guys go through that when they're injured. You know, they have a really tough time to stay within, so to speak.
Yeah. So is it important then for the athlete to stay integrated in the team when they're injured? And if so, how can that occur?
Now, I think it's very important to have the smart coaches, the management. I think that they should involve, you know, players, no matter if they're hurt for only for a week or so, or longer injuries. I think that you should keep them busy, you know, involve them somehow. And today, if you look at it, you know, with the video clips and all what they do today with the data and statistics, you know, I think there are possibilities for guys to be involved. Because the worst thing that can happen is that nobody asks about you, your what can you do for us, you know. I mean, you're, like I said, you kind of float away from things, you know, and then you lose your focus on things, and you start doubting, can I ever come back? Is this a possibility, or is it a problem? So I think as coaches, you need to bring them in and use them in small things. It doesn't have to be, you know, deciding big things, you know, but small things, just to keep them, players, you know, and myself, within the dressing room, not on the outside, coming, you know, late to practice, or or not being in the dressing room and so on.
Yeah.
I think that kind of mentally breaks you down slowly. It doesn't happen right away, but you can tell, you know, you got your energy in the beginning, but all of a sudden you're not wanted, you're not needed, you float away,
Yeah.
which is
So
really tough to get back. Even if you get healthy, you kind of start at a lower level, and that's not, shouldn't be necessary to do that.
right. So what are some things, I guess, like as a coach specifically, you mentioned that, you know, the coaches can kind of keep the athletes involved, even just in little ways, like whether it's, you know, statistics or analysis, but the longer that the athlete is kind of away from the team, that you use the term, they sort of float away. And it sounds like that has negative consequences for their ability or their belief that they can come back.
For sure. And it's small things like, if you have teams, why wouldn't you call even the injured player to the team meetings? You know, just be a part of it, sit in, get the information, you know, because sometimes it's lack of information that you start believing that, not getting that information, you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
You become too much on your own and by yourself, you know. You're probably put you on the bike and you ride the bike in another room, you know, and stuff are going on that you used to be right in the middle of it, and all of a sudden you're not. So
Yeah.
I think small things like team meetings, that's a big part of it, you know. And for coaches, and even if I know that the coach, if he can't use you, I mean, doesn't spend maybe as much time as with a guy that he could use to play, you know. So, but that's the thing, you know. Now you have to think a little bit broader than just here and now, because
Yeah.
this guy, a lot of the injured player, if they can come back at the same level as when they got hurt, then, you know, the half the battle is won already. So I think,
Yeah. Well,
instead of starting at a lower level.
well, and to your point, talking about thinking broadly, I guess, you know, your example of your injury experience with your shoulder seems like a great example because, again, you know, you managed to come back and have such a great season. And then, of course, yeah, being an integral part of the team that won the Stanley Cup, had you decided, of course, not to continue playing, obviously none of that would have happened. So,
Mm.
I mean, those seem like important insights, I guess, certainly for coaches to maintain sort of that athlete involvement in the team. I'm just wondering, maybe, you know, you've talked already about some of the challenges that an injured athlete faces, but maybe you can just speak to that in a little more detail.
No, I think it's it's, I shouldn't say as much as losing a good friend, but I think it's just losing that attachment to something that you're there for, you perform, and all of a sudden you're detached, and like I said, you feel a little bit on the side, and you start imagining things, that even that guys are talking about the injury, why is he out that long, shouldn't he be back, and you start to imagine things that are very negative and doesn't really help your healing. But I think that the most important thing is that you keep forgetting is it's the mental part. And if you're strong mentally, if you need help mentally, I think you heal faster. And like I said, you don't lose ground. You'll be coming back you'll coming back at a better level, which is really, really good for the team and the organization. But that's just the taking care of athletes that you think they are strong and all they need is to rehab a little bit, but it takes a little bit more than that. Some guys are strong and they can handle that by themselves, but most guys need help. That's for sure. And you don't want to show yourself vulnerable. You want to be a strong guy that I can do it, I need, give me some exercises and I can do it by myself, almost get back, but you need more than that. And especially the mental part is it's so much, to bring that positive attitude. I think that's very, very important for healing.
Right. So I think the sound cut out for a bit, but I think you mentioned that athletes don't want to show themselves to be vulnerable, but you mentioned the mental side is really important, and maintaining a positive attitude. I'm just wondering, what facilitates sort of a positive mental attitude for the injured athlete? What helps them to be positive when clearly you mentioned there's a lot of doubt and uncertainty, or their mind can run wild with things?
Well, I think it's two things. It's just before you get injured, you have to learn, I think it's usually that's when you can adapt it the best, is not when things haven't occurred, again, I mean, if you can look at a positive attitude when you're healthy, actually when you're playing your best, that's something Hap told me. Can you explain why you're playing at your best? And most athletes can't. Usually they say it just happens. If you can, as soon as you do something good, if you can write that down in a couple of sentences or words, and then then when you're not playing as well, and you look back and see, okay, this is what I did when I played at my best, But usually you go past that. I mean, when it's good, you think that's just the way it should be, and you don't really realize what's going on. And I think that's one important thing. But coming back from injuries too, that if you learn to have that, I would say the competence to handle yourself in that sense, knowing so much before it happens, then again it's going to be a lot easier. It's not easy, but it's going to be easier.
Yeah.
So
I think that's such a great point about just being analytical and thinking about why one is performing well. And I like, how you said all too often for the athlete, when things are going well, they just don't even think about what's contributing to their success. It's maybe only when things are not going so well that they start thinking, well, why am I not playing well? Or why am I, but if you can, it sounds like, or are you suggesting that if you can adopt that same approach of thinking about, well, what are the causes of my success, and take that to the injury experience, that can be helpful? Is that accurate?
sure, yeah. And I think again, in pluses and minuses, the more pluses you can put in your mind, by actually thinking when you're doing something good, that becomes pluses. Most guys don't, they don't persevere the pluses, but to assure you, when they start playing bad, I can't do this and I'm not doing that, and all that is minuses, and minuses just duplicate so fast in your brain that it almost when something happens, pretty much the brain tells you, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. You're not going to be good at this. You're not going to do this well. Instead of the opposite. So I mean, I think 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 pluses is gonna take away the minuses, or the one minus anyway. But
Right.
minus is it's a very, very strong. It's really, really powerful, because it's so easy to look down on yourself, or put yourself down and say, well, you're not good enough. You're not, I mean, you get almost like you could push the panic button. If I can't do this, and if I don't do this, maybe I'm not even gonna play.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it comes to confidence, and I think that you look at the best performers, in any sports. I mean, they are so confident. I mean, maybe it's if you're born in one way with a special personality, but I think some have worked on it too. Especially, like I said, the mental part. And I can assure everybody that in a positive mindset, you are going to be out from injury shorter time than if you get in with a negative mindset, for sure.
So what is it about the positive mindset? How is it that mindset then impacts your recovery time?
No, I just I don't know. It just feels like you believe, and even I shouldn't say you're healing yourself, but you believe in you can do it. You can come back, and I think you believe in experts, what they're saying. Doctors that are saying, if you believe in that right away, instead of saying, well, we'll see what happens. I think it just speeds up the recovery time,
Right.
and the frame of mind is just, it's going to be so different. And I see that, managing players over here in Sweden, that the guys with lower or negative mindsets, they are out longer. Then it's always tough to say, if you have a knee injury, it could be grade 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So but the guys that are positive, and they really believe in even coming back faster, they come back faster. So I think that's, but again, you can't do that once you're injured. You have to work on that before. And it doesn't have to be trying to be positive in recovering from injuries, but it's just being the positive mindset on scoring goals, or protecting your own net, or whatever. But you got to learn that. You got to learn it.
Yeah. So these are skills, and you mentioned a few times, these are some things that athletes can learn. Would you say then that you can learn to kind of be positive, or if you're having negative thoughts, to maybe shift your mindset or approach, that it's not something either you have or you don't, but that's something that you can acquire the ability to do? Would you say that's?
I'm very sure about that, because I think that you're going to have your ups and downs, but your downs are going to be so much shorter.
Yeah.
Some guys get down and they have 10 games in a row where they can't perform. To me, I mean, you're going to understand that you have your downs, but let's make them short. Let's make them 1, 2 games that you don't perform. But the third game, you're coming back because you got these tools, to bring yourself back into the mindset. But again, it's you see so many, especially young kids, they get down on themselves. It takes a long time for them to get back on track again, because they get lost. It's like I said, they float away, and they start doubting a lot of things that are happening, that they used to be maybe just things that it was easy for them to solve. And all of a sudden, everything's so hard. It's so difficult. You look at from 15 different angles, instead of knowing that if I look at it from this angle, I'm going to solve this.
Yeah.
So
what would you say, Hakan, distinguishes the athlete who is able to maybe more quickly shift from that more negative mindset, or all those sort of, you mentioned maybe a predominance of negative thoughts, to the more positive? Why are some athletes able to maybe do that more quickly, whereas others, you mentioned or allude to, that it takes them longer, or maybe they're unable to do that? What accounts for that?
I think I think it has a lot to do with the social aspect. I think that the way you treat yourself, and together with other people, the social part of it, so to speak, and that's talking to people, and getting the feedback, and asking a lot of questions. You're being a little bit more outspoken. And I think that, people that are more introverts, so to speak, they have a little bit of a tougher time, and they always go to themselves, and they blame themselves on so many things, that it really pushes them down. and the people that are more social and more eager to be, join forces again with, with the pack that you're supposed to be within, so to speak, then for those people it's easier in every aspect, whether it's performing or getting back from injuries or anything like that. And that's what the organization wants, and I think that the organization has to think about that, to develop that side of the coin, so to speak, instead of just pushing and saying that you have to play and you have to play better. Okay, what do we do? How do we proceed? How do we train? How do we do this to get people to be more positive and more proactive, I should say, instead of being active once it happens?
Right. So rather than just kind of focused on that outcome of, well, we want the individual to perform, but what are the processes or mechanisms involved in, helping the athlete come back from a difficulty or a setback? It sounds like that's important or has value. I'm just wondering in terms of, you're kind of alluding to a question about what distinguishes, or are there factors that distinguishes why some athletes may be successful in their return from injury, whereas others may be unable to return or struggle once they do return?
Well, that's kind of of course, a very tough question to ask. Why it's like that? But I think that, of course, it's in a little bit of the ground thing is the personality. Of course, I mean, I don't think you can. To me, personality is something you're born with. I think that attitude is something you can add, but personality is pretty much where most part you have with you. You bring it with you. You pretty much your whole life, and that's why people that are coming into, let's say, the NHL, are personalities is pretty good. Otherwise, they wouldn't end up playing in the NHL.
Yeah.
And then it just comes, the attitude is something you add on, and that attitude has a lot to do with, how do you, with a humble, good, forward attitude, then you can prevail. You can get by all the obstacles better than others can. But I mean, but then again, not everybody is as tough when it comes down to when bad things happen, injuries, or you get in slumps and stuff like that. So, but I think the bottom line is that successful people are playing at the NBA or the NFL or NHL, or of course they have good personalities coming in. But then to be the premier or play at a level where you should be, then you need that good attitude. You need that, I should say, the humble attitude, because you can have an attitude that's going to hurt you, but the humble attitude, working together with your teammates and together with your management and coaches, I think that's really important.
So humility has value, you would say?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like you treat people, you're going to get treated yourself, and that is going to be so much easier in the social part of your life.
Yeah.
I think that people are, I shouldn't say reluctant, but they don't want to help you as much if you had a bad, the ignorant attitude, I would say. So I think that's big thing for team sports anyway. So
right. So on that note, do you think that if the athlete, we were talking about the injured athlete, maybe it's easy for them to be negative and to have all those negative thoughts? I wonder, does that possibly impact the treatment that they get from others, maybe like the physiotherapist or other support individuals trying to help the athlete recover?
Oh, I think so. I think that some, especially for me, the experience I have as a GM, I think that a lot of the help, the treatments they get, the people that they want to give it to you, they're a little bit doubtful. If you're really willing to get back as fast as they think that you should, because you have those negative thoughts. And I think that physiotherapists, I mean, they need to catch that positive feeling in the people they're treating, I should say. So I definitely think so. I think that's going to prolong the rehabilitation if they can work, in the social part about this, and really trusting each other,
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of with the relations and respect, that the two R's for me are really, really important.
Yeah. Relations and respect.
Hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to just come back to that point that you mentioned that, athletes who have a positive approach or mindset that in your experience are able to come back quicker. And I wonder if it's something about their mindset that then translates into certain behaviors. So if they're, really thinking negatively, does that then impact their effort or their motivation or like how diligent they are with their rehab versus the athlete who's, saying, okay, this is tough, but I can work through this. And then they put in more effort or that's a question, I guess, rather than a statement.
But I think that to me that's obvious. I think that I would also use the word of being curious. What happened? What kind of injury did I get? Can I speak to the experts, the doctor, the physio, and really showing interest in what's going on. How does this treatment help me? And I think again, I was thinking about being curious, being have the visualization, the fantasy, and you need to show interest, in yourself and the treatment and the people that are who are going to treat you. I think that's important because some guys that are coming in, they're saying, okay, do your thing, try to make me healthy, and that's about it, and I think that you don't really help yourself heal faster. And I think that's a big part of it, and that sounds deep, but I think that's one of the big reasons why certain guys come back really in a hurry because they really curious what's going on. Why am I here? What happened? How can you do this? And what's going on? Learn a little bit about. Not saying that you want to become a physio or a doctor, but anyway,
Sure.
show interest. I think you understand more what's going on, and the more you understand, the easier it's going to be for you.
Yeah. So it's important, you would say, for the injured athlete to be, or it's beneficial for the athlete if they're proactive in getting information or understanding the nature of their injury and what's caused it, as opposed to, I think you refer to the athlete who's maybe more like, I'm here now, treat me. So sort of
Yeah.
that distinction between the athlete who's more curious versus the one who's just like, well, I'm going to let the experts take care of me. Would that be an accurate distinction?
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's say you have a knee injury, I mean, asking question about how it's supposed to feel once you're trying to recoup. Should it be, hurting when I do this and that, or just asking all these questions, and it makes it a lot easier to understand what can I do and what
Right.
can I do, and it's feel like this, then it's a lot easier to say, okay, I get over it and I get by it, instead of saying that as soon as something occurs and you know nothing about it, you're gonna say, "Oh Jesus, what's going on? I'm not gonna be able to get back." You start to doubt again.
Yeah.
What's going on, and all of a sudden you start maybe doubting the people, and so, and to me, again, that's a negative mindset that's gonna throw you back. Maybe and you're out for 2 more weeks instead of coming back and understanding what's going on because you ask questions and then you show yourself interested in your injury, and by that you learn, and even if you talk to people that know about injuries, other guys on your team get injured, and you start to understand things. That I think that's a little bit what life is all about. The more information you get, the easier it is to handle
Right.
things, I should say.
And it sounds like one benefit of getting information or learning and getting that education about one's injury is that the athlete can distinguish the meaning of the pain they're experiencing. So specifically, is like if they're experiencing a twinge or some form of pain when they're doing an exercise, is this benign or harmless pain, or is this something that's more sinister? And getting that information, would you say that that's helpful in helping the athlete make those distinctions?
Oh, for sure. And if you don't know or you don't ask and you don't get that information, you're going to give up. You're going to say, this is too painful, I'm not going to do this. And all of a sudden that's a setback itself. So, but if you know all the time that this is the way you're going to feel, you're going to be a little bit painful here, it doesn't hurt you, you can work through that. And the more you can work through that, the faster you're going to get back. That's for sure. Sometimes you don't think that you can train past the pain, so to speak. You know, you think pain, stop. Most people say that if you have pain, stop. You know, instead of knowing that, no, work through the pain and you're going to recover a lot faster.
Right. So some kinds of pain are ones that may be harmless and the athlete can work through, or maybe normal in the course of, you know, I don't know, tissue healing or something that's related to their injury. Whereas other kinds of pain, maybe they need to stop, but they don't know unless they have that understanding.
The conversation with the experts, the guys that know about this, you know.
Yeah.
It's like kids asking hockey players about how to shoot a slap shot or how to handle the puck, you know.
Yeah.
If nobody would ever tell a kid how to do it, you know, and never show it, you know, it's nobody's going to really learn.
Right.
And it's the same thing with this, I think, you know. I mean, and again, that's being curious, you know, what's going on, not turn away, instead just turn into it and learn a little about it. That's really helpful.
Right. So again, being curious and learning, in this case, about your injury, sounds like it has important value. Are there, in terms of pain, maybe you can describe some of the physical or psychological kinds of pain that athletes may experience, and feel free to refer to any of your injury experiences.
No, I mean, it just you feel uncomfortable, you know, whether it's mental uncomfortable or injury uncomfortable. It's really, it's hard. I mean, you have to work through that, and like we said, talked about before, preparations for that. I mean, don't expect to be injured or have I would say a mental meltdown, but you know, you prepare yourself, because it's gonna hurt. You know, it's gonna be tough. You know, I mean, that's the thing. You know, you don't, of course, you don't want to get out of your sink, so to speak. You know, you want to be in that bubble all the time, and it's not going to happen. You look at your career, you look back, most girls, boys are going to say, yeah, I had this injury, I had this injury, and I had this injury, and then go through it and said, oh, how did you get by that? What did you do and all that? So it's phases you're going through. I mean, there's hardly anybody that goes through a career of, you know, 10, 15 years in your sport and say, oh, I didn't have one injury.
Sure.
You know, and I had one, and I was so tough and strong that I just went through it and I healed right away. You know, it's not as simple as that, and that's why everybody should know and should prepare themselves for certain things, and how do you handle it when it occurs, you know. So
Right. And so again, you know, like in terms of knowing in advance that injury, particularly in sports like hockey that are hard and physical, that you'll probably get hurt at some point, that can almost help you manage the situation and sort of, as you say, adopt, you know, I guess a positive maybe mindset or approach once it occurs. We've talked a little bit about this. I have a few more questions for you while I have you here. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the role of athletes' expectations and how what they expect in terms of their recovery may have an influence on the recovery.
well, I think if you get no information from nobody, your expectations could be run wild. It could go from, you know, I'm going to get back the next day, until, you know, I'm never going to get back. So expectations are, I think it's needed again, you know, with the experts. You know, what kind of expectations do I have on myself by getting this information? And I think that's really important again, because I think that your own mind sometimes, when you're hurt, you know, it's gonna just blow yourself away. You know, I mean, it could go black or white. You know, it's hard to handle that, to be honest with you. And I think that you see some guys get hurt and they never come back. You know, it's just their expectations. You know, I shouldn't say that a lot gave up right away, but they have such a hard time seeing themselves coming back from a bad knee injury. Well, you have others that have the expectations and have the knowledge and they definitely come back, and even that nobody thought they were going to get back. So, but it is a tough situation when you end up, kind of get thrown out of your bubble, so to speak, and again, like I said, it's especially team sports. I mean, your expectations is you're going to be in that group form, and once you get there, you want to be there forever. And you get thrown out a little bit, then especially mentally, it's gonna hurt you. I mean, for sure. Nobody's gonna. I don't think anybody should expect anything else, but it's gonna hurt you mentally,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. But it also sounds like, again, how you kind of respond to being thrown out of your bubble makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. And then I don't know, how do you get experience from injuries, and how do you get experience from mental? I shouldn't say meltdowns, but that's hard. I mean, that's part of life experience, I guess. But again, like I said, sometimes you can experience that ahead of things without experiencing it. So
Right.
once you get there, again, it's visualization, and I think then all of a sudden you understand it in a totally different way. But that's something, especially younger people, they need help. I mean, I've seen devastating things where people get hurt, and they just lose the confidence, and they never come back. They, if they come back, it's at a third, fourth level. Not back where they were when they got hurt.
Yeah.
And that's career ending. Could be, of course, the injury itself could be very, very serious, but a lot of career ending is shouldn't be actually necessary, because if they have got the right help, and like I said, haven't been proactive, it would have helped to come back. I'm pretty sure about that. Not everybody, but some, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're suggesting that there may be some career-ending injuries that it's not just the severity of the injury itself that accounts for why they don't return or at the same level, but again, maybe other factors like their coping abilities, or kind of their self-belief or lack of self-belief, those kinds of things.
Or
Maybe.
cooperation from people around them. Like I said, especially coaches and management. I think that's, you have to look at that, because the money that are spent now, the financing of this whole category of elite sports, it's just huge. I mean, that the value of each performer is so high. So you need to think about that. Sometimes you look at the whole picture. What is the whole picture? You're looking at a player. Is it that he can shoot and skate and be smart on the ice, or is it the social part? Is it the physical part? Is it the recovering from all these? I mean, that's why you have an organization who's now getting bigger and bigger. It's to prevent things, and of course to recover things when it happens.
Right.
Both the mental and the physical part.
Yeah. So would you say that it's important then for organizations to take a holistic approach to helping an athlete recover? You mentioned the physical, the mental, the social components to things. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the role of motivation, and because you've talked about the importance of athletes sort of being curious and finding things out and learning. But I want to ask you explicitly, what do you think is the role of motivation in recovery from injury?
I think I think you find out that this is becoming more and more important, and I think that's overall. I mean, when I grew up, I think that the physical part, you talked about 70%. If you're in great shape and all that, that was 70% of the whole performance, and 30% was the mental, the motivation part. It switched totally. I think everybody can almost say that if you play at a certain level, your physical motivation, so to speak, or preparation, I should say, is there. I don't think that anybody can go out there without having the conditioning and all that. But the mental motivation, or the mental part of it, has become so big, and I think that's about 70-80% now. How do you handle things? How do you want to perform? how do you get back from injuries? How do you treat, like the 2 R's, respect and relations, how do you function socially? I mean, that's becoming more and more obvious that that's something that could be, it could be the difference of winning and losing for
Yeah.
organizations, and,
Right.
and even for you as a person.
And would you say that those percentages have shifted because of things like sports science? And, you mentioned nowadays, like all athletes are sort of, there's an understanding that physically they need to be prepared. And so, I imagine to compete at the NHL today, you have to, of course, have the physical skills and stamina, endurance, all these kind of elements to performance. But so is it shifted because of the fact that there's things like sports science, or the preparation has just gotten so good?
Oh yeah, no, I remember, getting my first letter from the Flames, how to work out in the summer. It's pretty much up to you. You want to come good prepared or not. And okay, everybody was kind of shrugging their shoulders. I came to my first training camp. There were veterans coming in, 20 pounds overweight, and they had the training camp to lose weight and get into shape. You go today and you come to training camp, everybody's in shape. So you don't have to doubt things, because they know if I don't come in shape, I'm not playing.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's really shifted, where the mental part has been, I would say, I shouldn't say it hasn't been brought along at the same tempo or the same leverage, so to speak. I think that's something it's growing by the minute. I think people are starting to understand, I mean, what is performance? Is it to be in shape, or is it to be mental in shape? And I think it's taking over more and more. And the more mental prepared you are, you're going to go pounds, and you're going to go past the injuries and all that. But that's something you have to work on.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of players are working on that. Some are, more and more are, but I think everybody should.
Yeah.
Organizations should bring in that to everybody. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious that the organizations are doing it.
Right. Well, and I guess if, thinking of performance as like a pie, what are the different components of it? Or, and I guess obviously the physical is important, but if there's interest in gaining whatever competitive edge, I imagine it's understandable that people are maybe looking to other components or other pieces of the pie to maximize the performance. So yeah, I guess just a few other questions, and thank you so much for your time and your insights. Are there any benefits to an injury, or is it just a bad experience, an entirely negative experience?
No, I think it could be a benefit. I mean, sometimes you get injured, you could be mentally fatigued, and then the recovery of that mental fatigueness could also be, it could be to positive things if you're out for a week or 2 weeks, but you have to just handle that in a good sense, and not lay at home on your sofa and do nothing. Again, just come to, what can I do more than just work on my knee? Is there anything else I can do mentally to use this time to get stronger? And again, it's again a question of your own imaginary, thoughts of things, and especially again your relations with other people. I mean, again, show interest in doing things that could be, really helping if you're out for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, even up to a couple of months. I mean, that's something has to be done, that's for sure. And it could be very useful for you for your future, especially if you're younger.
Yeah. So sort of how the time, whether the athlete derives benefit or not, it sounds like may be related to how they use the time and what they're doing. And would you say that there's, I guess for an athlete, there's probably a lot of structure to their normal time or their day-to-day routine. Is that important to kind of assert that structure on the recovery time, so that it's not just like, well, now I have nothing to do, or things are too open-ended?
I think that there should be almost like somebody invented a program. As soon as something happened, you're put in a program that's really, really going to help you get back as quick as possible, not get thrown out of the bubble. I think that should be, every management should say that that's the top value for us.
Yeah.
That this guy is not only coming back faster, but he's also coming back even stronger mentally. But you can look at it, for instance, right now, what's happening to us now with the corona, the COVID. What's happening now? We're sliding. People go from being a little bit frustrated, and being a little bit hope it goes by, and all of a sudden now everybody, I shouldn't say that we accept it because it's getting boring, but we're kind of our level right now. If there should be something that you have to win a gold medal, it will be very tough to get up to par and just do it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting to see the NHL now. What's going to happen now if all of a sudden 10 days from now you should be in Las Vegas or in Miami, because now we're going to start the season again. Who's going to win? And nobody's going to tell me that, well, Pittsburgh, they were so good before this happened, they're going to win it. No, it's all about who kept the mental, I would level the best, without getting bored out or thinking that, oh gee, this is not going to open up until, again, expectations.
Yeah.
What do you expect? I shouldn't say that you should be ready every day, because then you get worn down by that, but you have to be a little bit ready, so to speak, and expect that something's going to happen to keep your energy level at a certain level. So you, once you get back, you haven't missed all that much. But if guys come in and they're, oh my God, it's almost like it's tiring to get back and play because mentally you weren't ready.
Yeah. So, sort of taking it to this virus situation, if over the last few months, you haven't been keeping your energy at a certain level or staying kind of mentally active and involved, that is probably going to have negative consequences or for your ability to return effectively. It's interesting because before we were speaking, I got an email from a colleague who's at the NCAA, and she had sent me some data, and I won't get into too many specifics. I don't think she's released it, but just indicating that the coronavirus does seem to be taking a toll on a lot of the student athletes in terms of their mental health and well-being. And so I think your point is important, right? Like what they're doing during this time probably will impact their ability, if things resume or when things resume again.
We don't have a program for that. So that's pretty much, and nobody knows, am I going to be out for another week or a month or 3 months? So it's hard, but I think that the guys that can keep the level up, and the edge, so to speak, without wearing themselves down, I think they're going to be the winners, in this.
Yeah. And I think that point also kind of relates to more chronic injury, like you talked about shoulder operation or concussion, where, like concussion may be uncertain, right? Like, how long am I going to have these symptoms for? Whereas the shoulder is a bit more like, well, okay, I'll get the reconstruction done, and assuming I do the strength exercise, this is sort of the normal protocol. But, I imagine for maybe a chronic injury, like a back injury or concussion, it's maybe all the harder to deal with, because you're like, how long is this going to go on for?
That's so hard to prepare yourself for that. But that's even, we had to, I know Sidney Crosby went through it, but we had a guy here in Karlstad, he was out for almost a full year. The only thing he was working with was the mental edge, so to speak, so he didn't think about, only how to recover to get back to a normal life. He was actually thinking how to get back and even become a better player. Yeah. He had, after 1 year out, last year, he had his best year. He was just unbelievable. He had no fears to getting hit again, because experts said, and he believed in the good relations and respect for that he wasn't going to get easier hurt than anybody else. And he'd been working on certain mental things that he really, when he came back, he played his best game. And somebody said it's impossible being out for a year. No, but his mental frame, he kept the edge in such a good level that just happened. And I was so happy to see, because some people said that he's never going to play again. And he came back and he was one of the better players on the team, and he had his best year.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, when I had my shoulder, I was that year 86. I couldn't really perform at the level I wanted, and I come back next year and play, the year of my life. It's almost the same thing. What happened? What was the expectation? What was, and I think you came back to, again, relations with people, experts that could tell me things that was going to happen, and then work on the positive mental part of the game, or my rehabilitation. The same thing here with it. But you're right, the uncertainty of the length of your so out of the bubble, so to speak, that's becoming more, that's tougher and tougher mentally, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine it's, when it is uncertain, it's all the more difficult to keep that mental focus and edge that you mentioned. But, again, I think, like, when you talk about your experiences, or the player who came back after a year from concussion, again, that seems like, I suppose, a testament to the value of kind of engaging in some of those exercises, whether it's visualization, or sort of thinking about being aware of that negative talk, and maybe finding ways to shift the focus so that you're maintaining an optimistic frame of mind. And certainly there's research that looks at that mind-body connection, right? And, like, of course, sort of regardless of injury, I suppose, just negative emotions have an impact on physiology, right? And so if as an athlete, if you're not getting blood flow to the injured area, that probably restricts your healing or recovery time. So also, I think when you talk about engaging in those exercises, I'm sure there's also a physiological impact that actually speaks to your point about speeding the recovery time. My last question is, if you could give injured athletes one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, once they're injured, yeah. I would say that to every player, prepare yourself in a good sense, with a positive attitude. Once it happens, then you are prepared. But once you are injured, that's just, do not step out of your social contacts. Stay within. Even ask management, what can I do for this organization if I can't play? Make sure that your relation and keep your respect, for your teammates, for your coaches, and keep even a stronger relation, with people that's gonna, you're gonna be asked pretty much every day how you doing and all that, but you got to go through that. I think it's better to get asked how you doing 100 times a day than nobody's gonna ask you, because you're out of this, so to speak. So stay within, and don't hesitate to come to the rink, in pretty much the same as when you did practice and when you did play. Come at the same time frame. Don't get in when the other guys have started training, because then you're not going to be able to have that social, integration. I think that's very, very important. Don't lock yourself out.
Yeah, I think those are great words to finish our discussion, and thank you again for your time. It's been wonderful to have the chance to speak with you and hear about your experiences. So yeah, thank you so much.
Hopefully something is useful.
Yeah. I am sure it will be.